Who doesn't want to live in a healthy, safe world, right? It goes without saying that this is a rhetorical question. But what does it take to wipe out a deadly disease? Experts agree: widespread vaccination. For example, in 1967, the World Health Organization launched a program of widespread immunization and surveillance of smallpox. The last case of smallpox was documented in 1977. In 1980, the World Health Organization declared smallpox eradicated. So, why is it that so many parents choose not to vaccinate their children or themselves against preventable deadly diseases? Most arguments in support of vaccination refusal boil down to two groups: scientific arguments and moral arguments. Scientific arguments typically cite vaccine safety concerns. Moral arguments typically refer to freedom of choice. Let's consider a scientific argument first. Many believe that the MMR vaccines cause autism. So, the argument goes as follows. Premise 1: there is scientific evidence that MMR vaccines likely cause autism, based on a publication from 1998 by former physician Andrew Wakefield. Premise 2: Wakefield is a medical professional. Premise 3: MMR vaccines are not safe, based on premise 1 and premise 2. Premise 4: if MMR vaccines are not safe, they should not be administered to children. Conclusion: MMR vaccines should not be administered to children. Let's now evaluate this argument. Remember that there are two ways to disprove the conclusion of an argument. Either show that the conclusion doesn't follow from the premises, or show that at least one premise is false. In this case, the conclusion reasonably follows from the premises. So, let's check whether the premises are true. In fact, premise 1 has been disproven by an overwhelming number of subsequent publications, and the publication has been revoked. Premise 2 is also false. Wakefield's license has been suspended. So, we have good reasons to reject the conclusion. The scientific arguments supporting the safety of vaccines are actually stronger. They rely on a process of rigorous testing and abundant evidence for the considerable safety of vaccines. It is true that some vaccines may cause adverse reactions. However, for approved vaccines, those are with very low probability. Compared to the risks of contracting a deadly disease, the benefits from vaccination significantly outweigh the risks of side effects. This scientific counter-argument has been used in support of mandates for several childhood vaccinations. Two main reasons are: first, vaccines are beneficial for the individual by protecting them from severe infectious diseases. Second, vaccines are beneficial for others. A sufficient number of immunized people establishes herd immunity, thus protecting those who cannot be vaccinated. However, many disagree that those mandates are morally justified. They refer to their natural right to freedom of choice to support their opposition to vaccination mandates. So, what argument can be provided in support of restricting this freedom? Let's now consider a moral argument. take the argument presented by Andreas Matthias in the reading assignment for this unit. The argument can be reconstructed as follows. Premise 1, vaccination mandates are like seatbelt laws. Both protect the individual onto whom the mandate is imposed. Premise 2, vaccination mandates are like taxes. Both restrict the freedom of choice of a minority for the benefit of society as a whole. Premise 3, vaccines are safe and effective, and that's assumption based on science. Premise 4, seatbelt laws are morally justified on paternalistic grounds. The restrictions they impose on the individual are beneficial for that individual. Matthias justifies this premise based on consequentialism. Premise 5, taxes are morally justified because they maximize the well-being of society as a whole. Premise 5, taxes are morally justified because they maximize the well-being of society as a whole at the expense of a wealthy minority. And this is based on utilitarianism. Conclusion: therefore, vaccination mandates are morally justified. So, ultimately, the answer to the original question he posed is yes. The state can force us to get vaccinated. Now, if one were to oppose this argument, they would have to attack some of the premises, as the conclusion does follow. For those who believe that vaccines are not safe, premise 3 is going to be the key premise. They would claim that it is false. So, in order to strengthen his argument, Matthias would have to present sufficient scientific evidence to support his claim. However, even if all agree on this premise, some may still object on moral grounds. You will notice that in this moral argument, premise 4 and premise 5 are crucial. They refer to the moral principles that justify mandates. However, both of these are derived from a consequentialist framework. So, someone who subscribes to a right or duty-based theory may still be unmoved by this argument. They may still claim that they have their right to freedom of choice and that the government has the duty not to interfere with it. So, Matthias's argument would fare better if he came up with a way to justify his conclusion based on deontological or contractarian principles. And so it goes. In this course, we're going to encounter many similar tough dilemmas in which two values or moral principles are in conflict. We will be evaluating our own ethical values and commitments, but also rationally reconstructing others' arguments for opposing views so we can make moral judgments on a case-by-case basis.